Right. Thank you for all coming to listen to the Conservation Horticulture Symposium. I thought what I do, because I'm the first speaker here, is really talk about what conservation horticulture is and define it. So I'm not really going to some of the key topics and how some of the techniques are used in conservation horticulture. How many horticulturists do we have in the room? Self-defined horticulturists. You? Good, good. There's a few. Yeah, that's great. So sometimes it's confusing, right? Because conservation horticulture is a really, really big topic, and it's a little bit hard to define. So if you boil it right down, we grow plants, we propagate plants, we work in nurseries, we grow plants in landscapes, and we care for those landscapes as well long term. So that's the core of horticulture. But in botanic gardens, horticulture is a little bit special. Right? It's a unique, defined area of expertise, and that is really we develop and maintain living collections and associated purposes, and that involves tracking, recording data to support the mission of the garden. So it's a little bit of a unique career type in botanic gardens. And over decades, I've got some slides in Spanish here as well for you guys in Spanish, so you can read the same slide. These are over decades, some of us get the chance to work with tens of thousands of species just by working with large collections of plants. So then we can use the knowledge from that to actually project forward to understand how to grow species we've never grown. So very, very important skill sets, ongoing skill building. So if you look at conservation horticulture, the definition of conservation horticulture is the use of horticultural knowledge and practice to achieve conservation. And it includes all of these topics. And that's why conservation horticulture gets a little bit confusing, right? Because it's many faceted. So you've got capacity building and training, you've got introduction of plants into cultivation, you've got knowledge generation, extinction prevention, ex situ conservation, and protocol and best practice development are all part of horticulture. I think that's Spanish. Okay, well, it's missing one of my slides, which is a really good one. But one of the key topics, sorry, one of the key topics which I was going to address is one of the core skills of horticulture is propagation. And propagation lends itself in many different ways. So that's both vegetative, micropropagation, which can also be vegetative, and textural propagation, of course, and then seed propagation. And we can bring to bear lots of different propagation techniques to be able to solve problems with plants. And it gets really complex because we're talking about even within different types of propagation, we're talking about different types of sub-propagation, budding, for example, softwood, semi-ripe and hardwood. So we have to just understand that with any given species, we need to bring those particular skill sets. And we can actually start propagation for individual species, maybe in vegetative propagation if you can't give enough seed, and then actually produce something to flower and then collect seed from it in the future. And so we can use it adaptively to actually control and be able to manipulate plants to have the end conservation outcome. So propagation is really, really a core skill. But if you don't record the data from propagation, you cannot pass that data on. So you don't learn how to do that propagation. So I apologize for slide. These are two species we've been working on at Missouri. This is Caronia gigas, which is micro-propagated here. And this is Syndrocline commersonii, which is both very endangered plants. Cultivation is a really key skill. And this ranges from adaptive and modification of environments, humidity, temperature, all the way up to modification of entire environments, right? Replacing soil, understanding how plants grow, and through observational science, being able to adapt our skill sets to be able to make sure we are successful with plants. So there's a lot of observation and reporting that goes into understanding cultivation at a fundamental level. So this is where really horticulture comes in, and not just understanding the core growing, but also understanding what happens with pests and diseases, and being able to build that data set to be able to move things back into restoration as well. So just the process of growing plants is really, really important. Plant breeding and controlled crosses is something that's been going on in horticulture for many thousands of years. Selecting plants for cultivation for a long time. So the top of this slide has traditional plant breeding. Of course, you can see the tulips here at Hockenhof Gardens, and carnations, apples. All of that is part of horticultural breeding and selection. But for conservation horticulture, we can apply that through controlled processes. It's almost like the reverse, right? So we have those skills in horticulture to be able to breed and select out for traits. But for breeding, conservation horticulture breeding, then we're actually looking at the wider genetics and making sure that we're capturing that wider genetics. So it's almost plant breeding in reverse. So we do have those skills in horticulture. Very traditional skills. And then we come on to more of the soft things, right? We know that people need to connect with plants. If we cannot connect people with plants, why should people care about what we do? Why should people care about individual plants? The best way that we've learned to be able to get people to connect with plants is to show them examples. That's why gardens and landscapes are so important. And being able to maintain those so that people can interact with the plant species that you're working with is very, very critical. So a large part of our role is making sure that we connect people through the landscapes and effectively deliver that information. And you can see here at Missouri, we're focused on endangered plant species and bringing those into the collections. And the landscapes themselves are part of our work in actually understanding the cultivation. Outreach is really important as well, providing information. We have a lot of information that we load up, whether it's how to use plants in your home landscapes or cultivation of plant species. This is all part of horticulture as well, gaining information and excitement around plant species. So that outwards information exchange is really, really important for non-professionals and professionals. And then there's a whole realm of sustainable landscaping. So zero-scaping, sustainable use of products, materials, and it can be at its simplest way is understanding how to enrich landscapes with diverse species to support biodiversity, all the way up to native plantscaping and zero-scaping for lesser use of resources. So these are all important things in core skills of conservation horticulture. And of course, the way that we do conservation horticulture using materials and supplies, we can use a lot of plastics. We have to be careful with sustainable practices and also understanding how we can use horticulture to apply those skills. The sustainable practices is also part of core skill set of conservation. And then there's capacity building and training, and we do a lot of that in Missouri as well. So we're working in various areas, both locally, nationally, and globally. And it's passing on that knowledge, not just to plants, but also the facilities to support plants. So listing systems, nursery development, propagation and cultivation protocols, improving even down to hosting tours and exchanges, strategic planning based on conservation horticulture is all important information to be able to exchange with others to build capacity. So a lot of what I've been talking about here right now is really core skills that most horticulturists can be engaged in. But I want to ratchet it up just a little bit more here. So if you think about the real power of horticulture in botanic gardens, and this is my soapbox here as well, So if you look at the role of botanic gardens versus living museums and landscapes for conservation, every single individual plant counts, right? So when we think about that, we think about horticulture being combined with the curatorial process. And this is absolutely essential for delivering very, very high-end conservation. So at Missouri Botanic Garden, we invest a lot in data reporting. You need the data to be able to drive the conservation. So if you're bringing in particularly plants high conservation concern, if you do not record the data associated with those plants, you are not able to effectively deliver. So having a good, strong record system, making sure that you're mapping individuals in the collection as wild, and then recording all of that wonderful data, process-based data, propagation, cultivation, seed viability, and seed storage throughout the process in horticulture is really important. This is the stuff that enables the work that we're doing in horticulture. So if we do this and we have really good record systems and we have the ability to track and record, we can become living laboratories, right? So we can host commoner gardener experiments using the collection, both for our own data collection in horticulture, the use of the collection of the data associated with all of the records we're collecting, but we can also host targeted commoner gardener experiments as well, which are really, really important for understanding conservation value. And we work a lot across divisions to be able to understand how we can bring those combined skill sets of research and horticulture together to be able to understand challenges associated with plants. So this is very, very important and drives future development protocols. But the piece that really excites me as a horticulturist in a botanic garden is really combining all of this stuff in a capacity sense and looking at it through the lens of curation. So this is a very, very simple, very, very simplified model of curation for a garden. Every single horticulturist at our garden is a conservation horticulturist. Because we're focused on that in the strategic plan, in the collections policy, our horticulturists are trained to select plant species of conservation concern. Then we go through targeting our centralized database system, which allows horticulturists to select plants in various areas of the world around those conservation priorities. And then we acquire plant species, we propagate those to go out into the collection. So building conservation horticulture into curation allows you to maximize the capacity. I found myself, again, I do not like individual little units of conservation horticulture. I think everybody at the gardens, every single staff member needs to be involved. That's the way it should be done because it is so core into the curation process. You're actually managing the conservation. And this is an example here of how we use the decision making through that curatorial process. So the bar at the bottom there shows all of the various data that we're collecting at various times. And so for some plants, we have 35 pages of data, right? So this is field collection data, GPS, soil types, aspect. And then when it comes into the collection, it gets seed viability testing, seed cleaning protocols, seed storage protocols, propagation protocols, and then cultivation protocols. All of that stuff follows the plant along, and we can ratchet it up based on the individual need of the plant through that curatorial process as well. Some plants we may hold one of, as an example, and other plant species are really coalescing around our conservation horticulture to make sure that protocol development around. These are just some of the plant species that have benefited from our work. I won't name them, but if anyone's interested in these, they can actually get lunch with podcasts under you. And then some of the challenges of horticulture, availability of trained horticulturists, it's a challenging time. But lots of that's a problem. Perceptions of horticulture in various areas of the world is still a challenge. ability to get trained horticulturists, representation of women in horticulture in some countries, and the complexity of databases as well. That process of getting trained staff as well. So thank you, and I'll pass it along to some of my colleagues here. We can talk about some of the specific areas of application.
We do have time for one question. If anyone has a question for Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for your presentation. You opened my eyes for many possibilities. I have a question. So how is the process of acquiring plants from different parts of the world? Yes.
So it's really, really important to generate collaborations, right? So we're not going out there and just grabbing plants anywhere. So an example here, we've been talking to Maria Paula about collaboration between Cartagena de Garden. So you start with an understanding of what the needs are in any given place. Right? We're obviously interested in contributing to conservation of the species by being able to do conservation horticulture. Not necessarily that we want to hold it in our collections, but we just want to learn about it and share that information back. So one of the key things is discussing what the need is, developing those core ideas around that need, and then eventually you boil it down to what an individual species list is that's beneficial to work on. And typically it's things which are very, very difficult to propagate. And so we can coalesce an MOU around that. And then there's a lot of paperwork that goes into permissions to be able to do that. Right? We want to respect the rights of individuals and that, and also government. So we generate a lot of paperwork and permissions. But then the best we can possibly do is do work in both places. So for instance, if we were working with Cartagena, they would work on this here and do the exact same protocols that we would be doing for exchange information. And so that's kind of a modern how it works. There's lots of complexity in that.
Thank you so much.